My name is Eliza. The key turned in the lock near midnight. I recognized the slow, tired sound. It was Harrison. He had been away for 2 weeks on a business trip to Savannah, Georgia. I was in the living room with an open book on my lap that I couldn't manage to read. The floor lamp cast a circle of yellowish light over the wingback chair. The door opened and slammed shut. There was no "Hi, honey," nor the rumble of a suitcase rolling across the hardwood floor, only heavy, determined footsteps heading straight toward me. Harrison Caldwell, my husband, appeared in the doorway of the living room wearing the same navy suit he had on when he left, now wrinkled. His face, normally calm and calculating, was tense. His eyes, the color of wet slate, looked at me with an intensity that wasn't longing. Eliza. He said my name, and it was a hollow echo, not a greeting. Harrison. Welcome home. He ignored the words, taking a few steps forward and dropping his leather briefcase to the floor. His gaze scrutinized me, as if searching for something. A crack. A sign of guilt. How was the trip? I asked, keeping my voice in a neutral, flat tone. The trip? He snapped, biting off each syllable. Was long, exhausting, full of endless meetings and difficult zoning boards. I'm sorry. You're sorry? A short, dry laugh escaped his throat, and he took another step. He was close enough now for me to catch the faint scent of black coffee and airport lounges clinging to his clothes. Do you know what is truly exhausting, Eliza? Working 12 hours a day dealing with fires and then going back to the hotel alone, wondering why your wife hasn't bothered to pick up the phone even once. For 14 days I was down there. The accusation hung in the air between us. Dense and hot. I had felt it coming from the moment he walked in. Harrison, we are talking right now. It's not the same, he yelled, his fist coming down on the back of a nearby chair. The noise made me flinch inside, but I didn't move. 14 days, Eliza. 14. Not one call. Not one text to ask how I am. Nothing. Have I mattered so little to you? I took a deep breath. The book on my lap felt like it weighed a ton. I studied his face, marked by fatigue and a genuine, almost childish anger. It was the anger of someone who feels ignored, despised. For years, that anger would have terrified me. I would have rushed to apologize, to invent excuses, to try to calm the storm. But tonight, something inside me was as cold as the marble countertops in our kitchen. I did call, Harrison, I said, my voice sounding clear, strangely calm in the heavy room. He blinked as if he hadn't heard me right. What did you say? I said, yes. I called several times, actually. To your cell phone. The first time was 12 days ago on a Tuesday night, then last Thursday, and on Sunday. His expression of fury froze. It cracked for a moment of confusion. No. I didn't receive any calls, there's no record. You're lying to cover yourself. I'm not lying, I assured him, shifting slightly in the armchair, keeping my eyes locked on his. I didn't call your work phone. The one you give out. I called the other one. The one you keep in the inside pocket of your suit jacket. The one with the faded navy leather case, worn out at the edges. The silence that fell then was absolute. It wasn't the silence from before, full of reproach. This was different. Thick. Freezing. I watched the color begin to drain from his face. The fury vanished, leaving something naked and vulnerable exposed. His lips parted slightly, but no sound came out. The first time, I continued as if I were stating the facts of someone else's case. A little girl answered. A sweet little voice. I paused. She said, Hello, who is this? I asked if I could speak to you. She told me, Daddy is in the shower. Do you want me to tell him something? Harrison let out a choked sound as if he couldn't breathe. His hand reached for the back of the chair to steady himself. He was no longer pale. He was ashen. No, Eliza. Listen. The second time I pressed on, relentless. A young woman answered. By her voice, she had a very thick, southern drawl. From coastal Georgia, I'd say. I asked for you. She hesitated for a second. Then she said with a calmness that I now admire, Harrison can't come to the phone right now. May I ask who's calling? I hung up. Please. Then, his voice was barely a thread, a hoarse whisper. The third time was the most revealing, I said, and for the first time I noticed my own hands trembling. I pressed them hard against the book. The little girl answered again. She was laughing. You could hear the woman in the background, the one with the southern accent, saying, Maisie, sweetheart, who is it? And the girl, that girl with the sweet voice, yelled, Mama, I don't know. They aren't saying anything. And then she whispered into my ear, You are the lady from Daddy's work. The word Mama echoed in the room like a gunshot. Harrison stepped back as if he'd been struck. All the lines of his body, previously tense with anger, now crumbled. He collapsed into the chair across from me, burying his head in his hands. His breathing was ragged, erratic. Oh, my God. Eliza, I'm sorry. It wasn't my intention. What wasn't your intention, Harrison? I asked, my composure beginning to crack, exposing the sharp edge of my pain. That it wasn't your intention for me to find out you have another family in Savannah? That it wasn't your intention for that little girl to call Daddy to the same man who ignores his wife's calls in Chicago? He lifted his head. His eyes were full of panic, a visceral fear I had never seen in him. It wasn't the fear of losing me, it was the fear of his carefully constructed world falling apart. Her name is Harper, he said, his voice breaking on the name. And Maisie is 6 years old. 6 years old. The number pierced me like an ice-cold knife. 6 years ago, I had lost a pregnancy. It had been in the second trimester. A boy. Harrison had been on a crucial historic preservation project in Savannah during those months. He had come back to the Gold Coast the weekend of the memorial, quiet, distant. I had attributed his coldness to grief, or to men's inability to express it. Now, I understood his silence. It wasn't grief. It was guilt, or perhaps relief. 6 years, I repeated softly. A daughter. You have a daughter. It was before we got serious, Eliza, he stammered, desperately looking for a branch to grab onto. Harper and I. It was a college fling. By the time I found out about the pregnancy, I was already with you. We were already engaged, with our families involved. Everything was so complicated. She decided to keep her. I provide for them. I give them what they need. But you are my wife. This is my home, I swear. His words fell like counterfeit coins, worthless. Provide, a fling, you are my wife. They were the phrases of a trapped man, not a repentant one. And your phone? The worn case? I asked, unable to contain myself. It's Daddy's phone, the one you use when you're with your other family. Harrison couldn't hold my gaze. He nodded almost imperceptibly. It's easier that way. To separate things. A bitter laugh escaped me. It sounded awful even to my own ears. Separate things. My God, Harrison, you have a daughter. This isn't about separating bank accounts or business trips. You have a child with another woman. You live a life with her when you're in Georgia, and then you come back here to your life with me. And you have the nerve to get mad because I don't call you? Because I don't feed the fantasy that I'm the center of your world when clearly I'm not? I'm not even the only one. You are, he insisted. A spark of his old intensity returning. This us is real. Harper is an obligation, a responsibility. It's not love. Not like what I feel for you. Stop it, I screamed, jumping to my feet. The book hit the floor with a dull thud. I couldn't stay seated anymore. Pent-up energy surged through me like an electric current. I don't want to hear your justifications. I don't want to hear you belittle your daughter's mother. An obligation. That's what your daughter is to you. An obligation you attend to in secret for 6 years, while your wife in Chicago wonders why her marriage feels like an empty stage. He stood up too, alarmed. Eliza, please. Let's calm down. Let's talk about this like adults. Like adults, I cut him off, pointing a trembling finger at him. You have been lying to me for years. You have built a parallel life. And you want us to talk like adults? No. There is nothing to talk about. The words ran out, Harrison. They ran out the moment that little girl picked up the phone. I walked over to the window that overlooked Lake Michigan. Outside, Chicago was breathing in the night. City lights, cabs rushing down Lakeshore Drive. Life continuing. I felt trapped inside a glass box, separated from all of it. You have to leave, I said without turning around. What? His voice was an incredulous whisper. You have to leave. Now. Tonight. You cannot stay here. Eliza, this is my condo too. Not anymore. I turned to face him. And finally, the tears I had been holding back surfaced, hot and burning. Tears of rage, not sadness. This was the home of a marriage, of a man and a woman who loved each other. Or so I thought. But it turns out it's the crash pad of a single man who travels to see his mistress and his daughter. So, no, Harrison. Tonight this place is no longer yours. Take whatever you need and go to a hotel, to Savannah, wherever you want. But get out of my sight. He stood completely still, as if failing to process the words. He looked younger, smaller, defeated. The powerful real estate developer, the heir of the Caldwell family, reduced to a man with empty hands. And then? What? He asked desperately. Then, nothing. I don't know. But right now you have to leave, please. The last word sounded like a plea. A plea for him to give me back control. Even if only over the physical space I occupied. Harrison understood. He nodded slowly, mechanically. He picked up his briefcase from the floor, walked past me without touching me, and went down the hall toward the bedroom. I heard the sound of drawers opening, the closet door sliding. It didn't take long. He returned with a small duffel bag, the one he used for short trips. He stopped by the front door and looked at me. His eyes searched mine, perhaps looking for a glimpse of forgiveness, of weakness. I wiped my tears with the back of my hand and held his gaze. Cold. Empty. I'll call you tomorrow, he said in a rough voice. Don't bother. He opened the door. The hum of the hallway rushed into the sepulchral silence of the apartment. Then the door closed. The click of the lock sounded final. I collapsed back into the armchair, wrapping my arms around myself. The book was still on the floor. On the coffee table, my cell phone lay face down. I picked it up. On the screen, beneath a photo of a sunset in Lake Geneva that Harrison and I had visited an eternity ago, was the call log. 3 calls made to an unsaved number, the number from the worn Navy case. I had called him not once but 3 times, and each of those calls had shattered my world to pieces, word by word, voice by voice. I pressed my forehead against the cold glass of the window. Outside on the street below, I saw Harrison's figure emerge from our building. He carried his bag. He stopped for a moment and looked up toward our window. I didn't move. I didn't turn on the light. I remained in the dark watching him walk away, becoming just another shadow among the shadows of Chicago. Alone. For the first time in 7 years of marriage, I was completely alone. And yet, it was also the first time in a long time that I felt I was seeing things clearly. Harrison's larger suitcase was still by the door. I saw it when I emerged from the bedroom the next morning, an incongruous black lump on the pale hardwood floor. He hadn't touched it. He hadn't touched anything. After he left, I had stayed in the armchair until the sky over the lake began to lighten. Then I went up to the bedroom, our bedroom. The unmade bed retained the imprint of where I had slept. The other side, his side, was impeccable. the sheets taut. He hadn't slept there in 2 weeks. Perhaps, I thought bitterly, he had never fully slept there at all. I stripped off yesterday's clothes and got into the shower. The hot water failed to melt the knot of ice in my chest. I got out, wrapped myself in a robe, and then, almost out of inertia, I opened Harrison's closet. I wasn't looking for anything, or maybe I was. Maybe I was looking for proof more tangible than a child's voice on the phone. His clothes hung neatly. Expensive bespoke suits. Perfectly aligned white and blue shirts. Silk ties. It smelled like his cologne, vetiver and sandalwood. A scent that for years had felt safe and familiar, but now made me nauseous. I ran my hand across the hangers until I reached the back. There, hung separately in a garment bag, was his tuxedo. A flawless midnight blue wool tux. The one he wore for our wedding. I couldn't help it. I took it down. The fabric was heavy, fine. As I grabbed it, something fell from an inside pocket to the floor with a metallic clink. I bent down. It was a silver pocket watch, heavily engraved. The Caldwell family heirloom. I picked it up. It was cold. The watch that, according to his family's tradition, the groom presents to the bride as a symbol of his commitment to guide and provide. With this, I will always guide you home. Harrison had given it to me with his large, steady hands before the altar of the Cathedral of St. John the Baptist in Savannah. I, with trembling hands, had accepted it. I accept this as a token of your love and your will. A gasp escaped me. I pressed the watch against my chest. A sharp edge of the engraving pressed into my palm. A sharp, clean pain. It was then that the memory, whole and vivid, hit me not as a thought but as a flood. Savannah, May. A thick, humid heat shimmering over the cobblestones of the historic district. I was in the bridal suite, about to pass out not from the heat but from sheer panic. Breathe. Eliza. My sister Chloe told me, adjusting my veil. You look like you're going to your own funeral. Not your wedding. I tried to smile. The lace and silk dress weighed a ton, an exclusive design from a boutique on the Magnificent Mile, a gift from Harrison's family. The Caldwells did things well. Very well. Almost too well. My family, the Bennetts, were cherry farmers and winemakers from Walla Walla, Washington successful. But without the blue blood pedigree of the Chicago elite, they had viewed the wedding as social climbing. He loves you, honey, and he's a great catch from a good family, my father Arthur would say every time I expressed a doubt. I was only 24. I had met Harrison Caldwell 9 months prior at an art gallery opening in River North. He was a successful developer, heir to a long line of Midwestern tycoons and politicians. I was a recent art history grad working at that small gallery. It was love at first sight, or so I thought. He was handsome, confident, worldly. He made me feel special, chosen. In Chicago, everything was glamorous. Dinners at private clubs, theater premieres, weekends in Lake Geneva. His mother, Margaret Caldwell, a woman with perfectly coiffed blonde hair and a glacial smile, inspected me like a prize horse. You're charming, Eliza. So authentic. She said it as if authentic meant rustic. But Harrison defended me. You're the best thing that's ever happened to me, he would whisper. And I, raised among vineyards and open western skies, let myself be blinded by the brilliance of his world. When he proposed to me on a rooftop overlooking the skyline under the moonlight, I said yes without thinking. Or rather, thinking about avoiding the disappointment in my father's eyes, the anxiety of my mother thinking that love, true love, would grow. That the uncomfortable details, his frequent trips to Savannah for southern real estate acquisitions, his phone that he sometimes turned off, his reluctance to talk about the future, would resolve themselves. Now the organ began to play. It was the signal. Chloe kissed my cheek. You've got this, princess. I walked out. The aisle of the cathedral was endless. On each side, hundreds of faces, friends of the Caldwells in designer suits and fascinators, my simpler relatives and friends, their smiling faces full of pride. At the end, standing tall, was Harrison, his broad back straight in his new tuxedo. Beside him was his best man, Brooks. Harrison turned. Our eyes met. He smiled, a broad, confident smile. The smile of a man who has everything under control. My heart skipped a beat. For a second, all the fear vanished. I walked toward him. The ceremony was a golden, slightly overwhelming dream. The weight of tradition hung over our heads. When the time came, Harrison took the silver pocket watch from the velvet pillow. His fingers brushed mine. They were warm, a bit damp. His eyes, fixed on mine, seemed sincere. "Eliza," he said, his voice echoing clearly under the vaulted ceiling. "With this, I pledge everything I have. I promise to share my life and my guidance with you." I extended my hands. He placed the heavy silver timepiece into my palms. I accepted it, my voice weak, as a token of your love. Then, the signing of the registry. The kisses. The endless photos by the Forsyth Park fountain. Margaret Caldwell organizing everything with military efficiency. My mother Martha crying tears of joy. My father firmly kissing my forehead. "I'm so proud, sweetheart." Harrison didn't leave my side. His hand on my waist was possessive, protective. He responded to congratulations with grace. He joked with his friends. He looked like the happiest man in the world. I tried to imitate him. I smiled until my cheekbones ached. The reception was held at a stunning historic mansion owned by friends of the Caldwells. String lights, long-draped tables, Spanish moss, flowers everywhere. A jazz band played softly. Harrison and I opened the dance. He was a good dancer, guiding me firmly. "Happy, Mrs. Caldwell?" he whispered in my ear. I nodded, not trusting my voice. In his eyes, I saw something, a flash of triumph or maybe relief. At the time, I didn't know how to interpret it. It happened during dinner. We were at the head table. Harrison stood up to go greet an important partner who had arrived late. He left his jacket on the back of his chair, and a few minutes later, his personal cell phone, the one he carried, began to vibrate on the immaculate white tablecloth. I was talking to Brooks's wife, a funny woman from the North Shore, but the persistent buzzing distracted me. I looked at the screen. It didn't show a name, just a number. A Georgia area code. It vibrated 1, 2, 3 times. Then it stopped. A minute later, it vibrated again, more insistently. "Must be something urgent," Brooks's wife said with a smile. "With how important these men are." Something made me pick up the phone. I don't know why. Maybe to silence it. Maybe to take it to Harrison. As I grabbed it, it stopped vibrating. A missed call icon appeared, and below it, a text message alert. I could only see the first line on the lock screen. "Harrison, please call me. It's important. H." Just an initial. Nothing more. My heart dropped. It wasn't the heartbeat of a happy bride. It was the dull thud of a premonition. I left the phone exactly where it was, as if it had burned me. When Harrison returned with his easy smile, he put his jacket on without noticing. "Everything okay, darling?" he asked, kissing my temple. "Yes," I replied, forcing another smile. "Everything is perfect." He sat down. His phone vibrated again, this time in his pocket. He felt it. He reached in, pulled it out, and looked at the screen. His expression, for a fraction of a second, froze. It was so fast that I later doubted if I had imagined it. Then, with a quick gesture, he turned the phone off and put it away. "Nothing important," he said, taking my hand. "Just work. Tonight is only ours." I believed his words. Or I wanted to believe them. The joy of the party, the champagne, the music, it all pushed that small incident into a dark corner of my mind. I decided to forget H. I decided it was silly bridal jealousy and insecurities. We were newlyweds. The future was bright. The night ended late. We said goodbye to the last guests. We went up to the bridal suite, a massive room with a balcony overlooking the oak trees. Harrison was euphoric. He talked nonstop about how well everything had gone, how happy he was. I, exhausted, let myself be carried away by his enthusiasm. I was about to say something to him, perhaps ask about the phone, when his other phone, the work one, rang. This time he answered. He stepped out onto the balcony. "Hello," I heard. His posture went rigid. He lowered his voice. "No, not now. It's impossible." A pause. "I'll explain tomorrow." "Yes, I promise. Tomorrow." I have to hang up now. He disconnected. He stood for a moment looking at the screen, his back to me. When he turned around, his smile was forced, tight. "A problem with the zoning permits downtown," he said with a hint of annoyance. "Always the same story. But tonight I'm not thinking about it. Tonight I'm only thinking about you." He approached and kissed me. His kiss was intense, almost desperate. I responded, but a part of me was already pulling away, growing cold. A problem with the project. That was the first official lie of our marriage. The first of many. And the H from the message stayed floating in my memory like a stain on the perfect white of my wedding dress. I snapped back to the present. I was standing in my Chicago bedroom 7 years later, gripping the cold silver watch. My hand was bleeding a little. H wasn't a work problem. It was her, Harper. She had called him on our wedding day. He promised he would explain something tomorrow, the tomorrow of our honeymoon, the tomorrow of our first day as husband and wife. He had an explanation pending with another woman. And I, blind in love or simply cowardly, had buried it all. I had chosen the comfort of ignorance, the prestige of being Mrs. Caldwell, over the raw, painful truth. I dropped the watch onto the bed. It landed with a hollow sound. I pledge everything I have. The irony suffocated me. His assets, his life, his time, his promises, everything had been divided from day one, and I had only received a portion, the presentable portion, the Chicago portion. I walked to the window. The morning sun bathed the Gold Coast. The city was waking up, oblivious to my drama. Down below by the door, Harrison's suitcase remained a physical reminder of his absence, of his other life. Then I understood. The business trip to Savannah these past 2 weeks wasn't a trip. It was a visit. A visit to his family, to Harper, to Maisie, the 6-year-old girl, the girl who already existed, who was already a year old when Harrison and I were exchanging vows and empty promises. A wave of pure, scorching rage rose from my stomach. It wasn't just pain, it was fury. Fury at him, fury at myself, fury at all those years of complicit silence, of half-truths, of gazes I averted, of calls I didn't answer. It wasn't enough to cry anymore. It wasn't enough to kick him out. I needed to know. I needed to see it. I needed to put a face to H, to put a body to the little girl's voice saying, "Daddy." I marched across the room. On the floor next to my nightstand was my purse. I pulled out my phone. I didn't search for Harrison's number. I searched the internet. With trembling fingers, I typed, "Private detectives, Chicago. Discretion." The screen filled with results. My gaze landed on one. Hayes Investigations, confidential, untraceable. It had a number. I dialed. A professional, neutral male voice answered on the third ring. "Hayes Investigations, how can I help you?" I took a deep breath. The naive girl from Washington. The gullible wife. The woman who accepted a fake heirloom, stayed behind. In her place spoke someone else. A woman with a voice hoarse from a sleepless night, but firm. "Good morning. I need your services for surveillance in Savannah, Georgia." Hayes Investigations turned out to be in a discreet building on Wacker Drive with a small, understated plaque. The person I spoke to on the phone was Mr. Hayes himself. We met that same afternoon. I had no desire to go out, to see people, to fake normalcy, but a new, cold, metallic energy propelled me. It wasn't just the pain anymore. It was the need to know, to put faces to the ghosts, to turn anonymous voices into flesh and blood. I dressed simply. Black slacks, a cashmere sweater, a trench coat. No makeup. Looking in the mirror, I saw a stranger. Eyes too large, and a pale face marked by lack of sleep. But in those eyes there were no longer tears. Only a flat determination, like the horizon on a gray day. Mr. Hayes's office was small, neat, lacking personality. He was a man in his 50s, balding, wearing horn-rimmed glasses and a suit that was slightly too big for him. He didn't look like a movie detective. He looked like a mid-level accountant. It gave me confidence. "Mrs. Caldwell," he said, offering me a chair. "Please sit. You mentioned on the phone that this is a surveillance matter." "Yes," I replied, sitting with my back very straight. I placed my purse on my lap like a shield. "My husband, Harrison Caldwell, a real estate developer, has been traveling frequently to Savannah. I need to know who he sees, where he goes, who he is with." He nodded, unbothered, and grabbed a notepad. "Understood. Any specific suspicions? A name? A location?" "A name," I said, and the word tasted like ash in my mouth. "Harper. I don't have a last name. And a little girl. Her name is Maisie. She should be about 6 years old." He wrote it down. His pen didn't make the slightest sound. "Address in Savannah? Office? Frequented locations?" "He has his firm's branch office on Bull Street. He sometimes stays at the Perry Lane Hotel, sometimes in an apartment. I don't know the address, but..." I paused, searching for the words. "But I think he spends time in the Starland District. I've heard him mention that neighborhood." "The Starland District is a specific area," he muttered, writing again. "It's a good starting point. 6-year-old girl. School. Extracurriculars. They usually leave a trail. Does your husband know you're going to investigate him?" "No. And he must not know under any circumstances." "Of course. Discretion is our priority." He put down the pen and looked at me through his glasses. His eyes were intelligent, impartial. "Mrs. Caldwell, I must ask you, are you sure? Once this door is opened, what's behind it is usually hard to forget. Sometimes doubt hurts less than certainty." His warning was kind, professional. It wasn't the first time he'd given it. I took a deep breath. I already heard the little girl call him Daddy on the phone, Mr. Hayes. The doubt is over. Now I need the certainty to know what I am dealing with so I can decide. He held my gaze for a second longer, then nodded as if my answer was the correct one. The one he expected. "Very well. We will begin immediately. I will need a recent photo of your husband and a written authorization to cover us legally. I will keep you informed. Daily reports if there are updates, and photos if we get them." "Photos," I repeated, a shiver running down my spine. "Yes, I want photos." I left the agency with a knot in my stomach. I had taken the step. There was no turning back now. When I got home, Harrison's suitcase was gone. The doorman must have taken it, or perhaps he had come while I was out. The apartment was silent, but it no longer felt like a tomb. I felt the strange agitation of the hunt. First thing the next morning, I received an email from Mr. Hayes. Subject: Initial report. I opened it with slightly trembling hands. There were no photos yet. Just text. Dry. Factual. Subject HC took a flight to SAV, arriving at 9:20 a.m., Uber from airport to office on Bull Street. Remained there until 2:30 p.m. Lunch alone nearby. At 4 p.m., took an Uber to the Starland District. Exited on Thomas Square. Entered residential building number 412. Door locked. Could not gain access. Remained inside for approximately 1 hour. Exited accompanied by a female. Approx. 30 years old. Long blonde hair. Average height. Walked toward Forsyth Park. Brief stroll. Returned to the building. HC exited alone at 6:45 p.m. Uber to the Perry Lane Hotel. Checked in. End of surveillance for today. Thomas Square. The Starland District. My heart beat hard against my ribs. Female. Approx. 30 years old. Long blonde hair. Harper. I had an address, a street, a description. The following days were a slow drip of reports. Harrison went back and forth between his office, the hotel, and Thomas Square. Sometimes he spent the night at the hotel, other times at the building in the Starland District. Mr. Hayes was meticulous. He noted schedules, streets, small details. Subject bought peaches at a corner stand before entering building. Subject and female exited with female child. Approx. 6 years old, blonde hair, overalls. Walk through the neighborhood. Family-like attitude. Every word was a nail in the coffin of my marriage. Then, on a Thursday morning, the first batch of photos arrived. It was a link to an encrypted folder. When I opened it, I couldn't catch my breath. The first photo. Harrison walking out of the door near Thomas Square. He was wearing casual clothes, jeans, and a quarter-zip sweater. He was smiling. Smiling in a way I couldn't remember seeing in years, relaxed, authentic. The second. A woman beside him. Harper. She wasn't a supermodel. She was a normal woman. Pretty in a simple way. Wavy blonde hair falling over her shoulders, a denim skirt, and a loose blouse. She carried a canvas tote bag. She was walking, looking at Harrison, saying something. He was listening to her. His head tilted. The third. The three of them. Harrison, Harper, and between them a little girl. Maisie. She wore a little blue dress and light-up sneakers. She had her mother's hair and Harrison's wide, carefree smile. They each held one of her hands. The girl was skipping, and they let themselves be pulled along by her jumps. It was a stolen photo from a distance, but the happiness it conveyed was so palpable, it burned my eyes. I closed it. I couldn't look anymore. I stood up and paced the living room in circles like a caged animal. It wasn't enough to read the reports. Seeing them together like that, like a normal family taking a stroll on a Thursday afternoon, that was different. That was killing the last shred of hope. It was then that I made the most impulsive and perhaps stupidest decision of my life. I couldn't stay in Chicago waiting for more photos, more reports. I had to see it with my own eyes. I had to put a voice to that woman. Look at that little girl. I had to step on the ground of his world. I booked a flight to Savannah for Friday morning. I didn't pack much luggage, just a tote bag. I didn't tell anyone I was leaving. Walking out of Savannah, Hilton Head International, the air hit me. It was warmer than in Chicago, humid, heavy with the scent of pine needles, sweet tea, and the coastal marsh. I took a cab, not to the hotel. I gave him the address. Thomas Square, the Starland District. The cab drove through the city. The Starland District stretched out before me with its quirky boutiques, vibrant murals, and historic Victorian homes converted into creative spaces. It was a world away from the stately Chicago Gold Coast where we lived. It was alive, working class, artsy. Harrison's neighborhood. His other life. I got out of the cab a block early. I walked, feeling invisible, and yet absurdly exposed. I reached the building. It was an old 2-story brick building with large industrial windows filled with potted ferns. The ground floor wasn't a residence, it was a studio. On the wooden door, a painted sign hung. Low Country Ceramics. And in smaller letters, Harper Davies. Harper Davies. She had a full name now and a trade. A ceramicist. She wasn't the typical mistress. The secretary, the work colleague. She was an artisan with her studio on the ground floor of her house. I took a deep breath. The smell of wet clay and kiln heat reached the street. The studio door was ajar. From outside, I could hear the sound of an electric pottery wheel. A low, constant hum. I stepped closer. The interior was flooded with light. Shelves were packed with pitchers, plates, mugs, all with the characteristic shine of glazed ceramic. And in the center, sitting at a wheel, was her. Harper. Her hair was tied up in a messy bun, stained with clay up to her elbows, focused on the piece spinning between her hands, stretching and taking the shape of a vase beneath her deft fingers. This wasn't the woman from the photo dressed up for a walk. This was the real woman. Sweaty, strong, absorbed in her work. I stood still in the doorway watching her. She didn't see me at first, until by some instinct, she looked up. Her eyes, a clear, direct blue, met mine. The wheel kept spinning, but her hands stopped. The vase deformed slightly. There was no immediate recognition. Why would there be? She didn't know me. I was just a stranger in the doorway of her studio. But something in my gaze or my rigid posture must have alerted her. She turned off the wheel with a pedal. The silence left behind was sudden, heavy. "Good morning," she asked, wiping her hands on a rag. Her voice was the same one I'd heard on the phone, serene with that warm, musical southern drawl. But now there was caution in it. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. I took a few steps into the studio. The smell of clay was stronger. My eyes scanned the place. It was beautiful, messy, alive, full of handmade things. In a corner, there was a small space with a low table and cushions, children's toys scattered around, drawings stuck to the wall with pushpins. One of them showed 3 figures, one big, one medium, one small, holding hands. Above them, in clumsy letters, "My family." Harper followed my gaze, and then her expression changed. The caution transformed into a slow realization, and then into something harder. She stood up. She wasn't very tall, but she had a solid presence, anchored to the floor. "Can I help you with something?" she asked again. But this time it wasn't a shopkeeper's question. It was a challenge. I found my voice. It sounded hoarse, strange, even to me. "You are Harper." She didn't nod. She didn't need to. She crossed her arms, revealing the dry clay stains on her apron. "And you must be Eliza," she said. It wasn't a question. She knew. She knew the moment she saw me. The fact that she said my name with such naturalness threw me off, as if my existence wasn't a secret but a known, accepted fact. "Yes," I confirmed. There was nothing else to say. She nodded slowly. Her eyes scrutinized me without open hostility, but without friendliness either. It was a woman-to-woman evaluation. "Harrison isn't here," she said finally. "He went back to Chicago early this morning." "I know," I replied. "I didn't come to see Harrison." "Right," she said, a short word full of meaning. She walked over to a sink and began washing her hands more carefully, turning her back to me for a moment. She spoke over the sound of running water. "So, why did you come? To see the monster?" "The other woman. To check out the woman who steals your husband." Her tone wasn't victimhood. It was ironic, almost defiant. She looked back at me. "You didn't steal anything from me," I said, surprised by the firmness in my voice. "Because I didn't have him. Apparently, I never fully had him." Harper let out a dry snort, almost a laugh. "All right. So, you've talked. I know he got caught. He called me last night pretty worked up. Said he couldn't go back to the condo anymore, that you'd kicked him out. And what did you tell him?" I asked, unable to stop myself. I told him that was a problem between the two of you, that I had nothing to do with it. You have everything to do with it, I exploded. The resentment I'd been holding back for days spilling out. You have a daughter with him. You have this. I made a sweeping gesture that encompassed the studio, the house, the entire life laid out before my eyes. She stopped drying her hands. She stared hard at me. I have this because I worked for it, Mrs. Caldwell. With my own hands? This studio is mine. This building is mine. Harrison helps. Yes, he pays for things for Maisie. But this... Her voice hardened too. This isn't a gift from him. It's my life. The one I had before he showed up, and the one I still have. But he's in it, I countered. He's part of it. He comes here. He lives here when he's in Savannah. He's the father of your daughter. Yes, she admitted without lowering her gaze. He's the father of my daughter. And I am the mother. But we aren't husband and wife. We aren't a normal family. We are this. What you see. Her bluntness left me speechless. There was no drama in her tone, no pride, not even sadness. Just a fact. A raw reality. How long? I asked. Needing to know everything. Needing to fill the gaps of 7 years of lies. How long have you two been doing this? Harper sighed. She leaned against the edge of the sink. For the first time, I saw a shadow of exhaustion on her face. Since when do we know each other? Forever. We grew up in the same county. We were high school sweethearts. He went off to Chicago for college, but he'd come back. We were young. Then he got a job up there with his family. He started moving up, changing, met different people. I knew about you. Not from his mouth, of course. From mutual friends down here. By the time I found out he was getting married, I was already pregnant with Maisie. I told him. And what did he do? The question came out in a whisper. He freaked out. He asked me. He asked me to take care of it. Said it wasn't the right time. That with the engagement, the wedding, his family, it would be a scandal. There was a trace of old bitterness in her voice. I told him no, that the girl was mine and I was having her. He left, went to Chicago, married you. But when Maisie was born, he came back. He couldn't help himself, he said. He wanted to be in her life. And I let him. For her. Because a little girl needs a father. Or at least the shadow of one. Her words fell like stones. Went to Chicago, married you, my wedding. The most important day of my life. For her, it had been a date on the calendar. The day the father of her child had gone off with someone else. So all this time I started. All this time, she confirmed. He's had 2 lives. The one up in Chicago with you, and the one down here with us. It's not fair, I know, for anyone. But that's how it is. And you didn't think about telling me. Telling me the truth? I asked, my own voice carrying a tone of reproach. Harper looked at me as if I'd said something tremendously naive. For what? To hurt you so you'd leave him. And then what? Do you think he would have moved down here with me to live happily ever after? She shook her head. No. Harrison isn't like that. He needs his Chicago world. His family name, his status. He comes here to play normal family to escape. But in the end, he always leaves. He always goes back to you. She paused. Or he went back. The use of the past tense didn't go unnoticed by either of us. Went back. Now everything was broken. Do you love him? The question surged from a deep, dark place inside me. Harper stayed silent for a long time. She looked at her hands, still marked by clay. I loved him, she said softly at last. A lot. But that was years ago. Now he's my daughter's father. He's a habit, a complication. Sometimes when he's here, I ask myself what I'm doing, why I accept this. But then, I see Maisie run to him when he walks through the door and, well, He's her dad. Her pragmatism disarmed me. There was no romance in her words. There was no great forbidden love affair. There was habit, convenience, and the well-being of a child. It was much more real, and therefore much more devastating than any story of passion. At that moment, a noise came from upstairs, small footsteps running, then a sing-songy little voice coming down the stairs that must have led to the living quarters. "Mama!" I finished my drawing. "Can I come down?" Harper tensed. Her gaze met mine. For an instant, I saw something akin to panic in her eyes. Not the panic of a discovered mistress, but the panic of a mother wanting to protect her child. "Just a minute, sweetie," she yelled toward the stairs in a forcedly cheerful voice. Then she turned to me and lowered her voice to an urgent whisper. "You have to leave. Now. Please." I grew nervous too. I wasn't ready for this. To see her. To confront the living embodiment of the little voice on the phone. "Is that?" I started. "Yes, it's Maisie. And I don't want her to see you. I don't want her to know who you are." "Not yet. Please go." Her plea was genuine. I nodded mechanically, turned around, and walked toward the door. Just as I stepped out onto the street, I heard the child's footsteps reaching the bottom of the stairs. "Mama, who was that lady?" I didn't hear Harper's response. I closed the studio door behind me and leaned against the brick wall, my heart pounding in my chest. The afternoon sun of Savannah hit my face. Blindly, I started walking, moving away from Thomas Square, from the studio, from the life I had seen inside. Harper's words echoed in my head. "I was here first. We grew up together. He went to Chicago. He married you." Every sentence was a piece of the puzzle that had been my marriage. And now, finally, the picture was clear, and it was much uglier and sadder than I had ever imagined. There was no villain. There was only another woman trapped in the same lie. And a little girl who did her drawings and ran down the stairs singing, unaware that her world was also about to break. The flight back to Chicago was a journey through a desolate internal landscape. The hum of the jet engines matched the monotonous rhythm of Harper's words in my head. We grew up in the same county. I was here first. He married you. It wasn't just the infidelity. It was the timeline. It was the certainty that my marriage, from its very first day, had been a building constructed on rotten foundations. And I, blindly or willfully naive, had lived in it for 7 years. I arrived at my Gold Coast apartment past midnight. The darkness and silence enveloped me like a heavy cloak. I dropped my bag on the floor and collapsed onto the sofa without turning on the light. On my phone, a bank notification popped up. A large transfer from Harrison into our joint checking account. His way of buying peace, paying for silence, or perhaps maintaining appearances for another month. I deleted the alert. The next day, the outside world broke in with the force of a hammer. It was Saturday. At 10 o'clock sharp, the doorbell rang. Insistent, authoritative. It wasn't the soft ring of a friend. It was the long, firm press of someone demanding to be seen. When I opened it, I found my brother Holden. He looked impeccable as always in a charcoal gray suit, but his face, normally calm with an easy smile, was tense. His dark eyes were full of a worry that bordered on fury. "Eliza," he said, and without another word he wrapped me in a strong, almost desperate hug. Then he held me by the shoulders, scrutinizing me. "My God, you look awful. Why didn't you call me? Why do I have to hear about this from that hyena of a mother of his?" Before I could answer, I heard footsteps in the hallway. Holden turned instinctively, stepping in front of me like a wall, and there she was. Margaret Caldwell. She was dressed in an impeccable pearl gray suit that cost more than half the neighborhood's monthly rent. Her blonde hair was pulled back into a perfect chignon, not a strand out of place. In her leather-gloved hands, she carried a Birkin bag. And in her ice-blue eyes there was no trace of maternal concern, only a cold evaluation, like a general inspecting a battlefield after a defeat. "Eliza," she greeted with a minimal nod. Her gaze moved from me to Holden, whom she measured from top to bottom with disdain. Holden, I didn't know you would be here. Well, now you know, Holden responded without yielding ground. His Pacific Northwest inflection, normally smoothed out, became more pronounced. I'm Eliza's brother, and I'm here. Evidently, she said, slipping past us as if we were furniture. She entered the living room smelling faintly of expensive perfume and superiority. This place looks like a crypt. Can't we turn on a light? I switched on a lamp. The light revealed the relative disorder of the room. Books still on the floor, pillows unarranged. Margaret's eyes registered everything, filing it away as just another symptom of the crisis. Sit down, Eliza, she ordered, taking the main armchair, the one Harrison always used. Holden pulled me to the sofa, sitting beside me, a solid, protective presence. Margaret, I don't know why you're here. I started. I am here to inject some sanity into this nightmare situation, she interrupted, placing her purse on her knees with precision. Harrison has been at my house since last night, an absolute wreck. He isn't eating, he isn't sleeping. He told me about the absurdity that occurred. Absurdity? I repeated, and I felt Holden take my hand, squeezing it in warning. What do you want me to call it? She said, raising a perfectly penciled eyebrow. A man, a husband, goes on a business trip, comes back tired, irritable, and instead of receiving him with understanding, with affection, you hurl a gross accusation at him and throw him out of his own house in the middle of the night. The cynicism of her narrative left me breathless. She had completely rewritten it, transforming Harrison into the victim and me into the hysterical wife. It wasn't an accusation, Margaret. It was the truth, I said, my voice sounding firmer than I expected. Harrison has another woman in Savannah and a 6-year-old daughter. There was a thick silence. Holden beside me held his breath. He only knew there was a crisis, not the details. Now he had them. His hand squeezed mine tighter. Margaret didn't flinch. Not a single muscle in her face moved. She simply tilted her head, as if I had said Harrison preferred fish to steak. That is what he told you in a moment of extreme tension, an outburst. Men, when they feel cornered, say stupid things. They aren't stupid things, I exploded, standing up. I spoke to her. I saw her. Her name is Harper Davies. She lives in the Starland district. She has a daughter named Maisie. Harrison admitted it. For the first time, something crossed Margaret's eyes. It wasn't surprise, it was annoyance, a deep annoyance, as if a servant had broken a valuable piece of porcelain. Harper Davies, she repeated, pronouncing the name as if it tasted bad. I figured it was that name. You knew? I asked, freezing on the spot. You knew about this? She sighed, a sigh of profound, exhausted patience. Eliza, darling, sit down, please. This is no way to behave. Answer me. You knew. I knew, she said with exasperation, that Harrison had in his youth, before he got engaged to you, certain attachments from his time working down south. Locals. Nothing serious. His father and I believed that all of that was left behind when he settled here in Chicago, when he started building a real future, when he met you, when he made an appropriate marriage. Every word was a lash. Attachments. Locals. Nothing serious. Appropriate marriage. My marriage was just that. Something appropriate, a social transaction, and Harper and Maisie were just a youthful attachment, people of a lower class who were supposed to stay behind. A 6-year-old daughter is not nothing serious, Holden said, speaking up for the first time. His voice was low, but loaded with a contained anger I recognized from when we were kids. She's a person. And my sister has the right to feel betrayed. Margaret turned her glacial gaze toward Holden. Holden, I understand you want to defend your sister. It's commendable, but this is a family matter. The Caldwell family. And the Bennett family, of course. she added as a dismissive afterthought. And it must be resolved with discretion and clear heads, not with dramas and public scandals. And how is this resolved, Margaret? I asked, sitting back down. I felt my legs trembling. By pretending nothing happened, letting Harrison continue flying down to Savannah to visit his family while I stay here playing the happy Chicago wife? Don't be melodramatic, Eliza, she snapped with impatience. Harrison made a mistake. A grave mistake, yes. A youthful indiscretion that had unexpected consequences. But he is your husband. You are husband and wife before God, and the law. And marriages, real marriages, overcome these things. You forgive. You move on. An indiscretion, Holden muttered, shaking his head. Margaret ignored him. She focused on me with the intensity of a hawk. Listen to me, Eliza. Be reasonable. Harrison is an important man. He has a career, a reputation, a family name to protect. This woman, this child, they are a problem. A problem that can be managed with a contract, with money, if necessary. But what you cannot do is throw away 7 years of marriage, a union between two respectable families, over a fit of wounded pride. Margaret's world was simple. Everything came down to reputation, names, and money. Pain, betrayal, broken love, those were fits. Melodramas, things for people without class. It's not wounded pride, I said, fighting to stay calm. It's that I don't love him anymore. Or maybe I never did. Maybe I just loved the idea of what he represented. And now that idea is shattered to pieces. Margaret rolled her eyes. Love. Always with love. Love is a very poor foundation for a marriage, Eliza. Respect, duty, shared interests, that is what endures. You and Harrison have a wonderful life, a magnificent condo, social standing, and a sure future. Are you going to throw all that overboard out of jealousy toward a potter from the South and her bastard child? The word bastard echoed in the room like a gunshot. Holden jumped to his feet. That's enough. Do not speak about an innocent child that way. And do not speak to my sister like that. Holden, please, I said, touching his arm. I knew Margaret was trying to provoke us, to make us lose our cool. I took a deep breath. Margaret, with all due respect, my marriage to Harrison ended the moment I found out the truth. There is no going back. You can think whatever you want. I have made a decision. Her expression hardened even more. The mask of condescension vanished, revealing the steel beneath. A decision. And what decision is that, if I may ask? Divorce? I pronounced the word. She reacted as if it were a contagious disease. Do you have any idea what that would mean? The scandal, the press in the city, our families exposed? The Bennetts, with all due respect, are not immune to gossip. Your father, with his vineyards, do you think his investors and clients will like associating with a man splashed by a scandalous divorce? And what are you going to do? Run back to Walla Walla, to Daddy's arms? A failed divorcee? Every sentence was a calculated low blow meant to hurt, to scare. She was playing on my deepest fears, the fear of disappointing my family, my father, who had bet so heavily on my good marriage, the fear of loneliness, of social shame. My sister is not a failure, Holden interjected, standing tall next to me. And my father will be proud of her, whatever she does. We aren't scared of the gossip of some Chicago snobs. Margaret offered a cold smile. Very brave, Holden. Very romantic. But the real world doesn't run on romance. She looked at me. Eliza, think with your head, not your heart. Harrison is remorseful. He's destroyed. He is willing to do whatever it takes to fix this. He will cut all contact with that woman. He will provide for the child, of course, discreetly. But he will end that relationship. He will come back home to you. You can start over. More carefully, of course. Perhaps even have children. That always helps to mend a marriage. The blow was so low, so unexpected that it knocked the wind out of me. I staggered, and Holden grabbed my arm. "What did you say?" I whispered. Margaret looked at me, and for the first time I saw something resembling pity in her eyes, the cold pity of a surgeon. "Come now, Eliza. Don't tell me you haven't known it, haven't thought about it. 7 years of marriage. No children. The doctors told you after that unfortunate incident that it was unlikely, but not impossible. With patience, with care, Harrison has never pressured you. He's been a gentleman, but a child unites. It creates a bond. It seals things. With a child, all of this would become a bad memory. The tears I had held back with so much effort since Savannah burst from my eyes. They weren't tears of sadness, but of impotent rage, of humiliation. My loss, my most intimate pain. She was using it as a weapon, as an incentive. Have a child and forgive your husband's infidelity. "Get out," Holden said, his voice trembling with fury. "Get out of this house right now." Margaret didn't move. She looked at me, ignoring him. "Think about it, Eliza. Think about your future. About your family's future. Don't make a stupid decision out of pride. Pride is a luxury that women like us cannot afford." She stood up imperceptibly, adjusting her jacket. She picked up her bag. "Harrison will stay at our place for a few days to give you both space. He will call you. I hope that when he does, you will be more willing to be reasonable." And without waiting for an answer, she walked out of the living room. We heard the click of the front door closing. The silence she left behind was absolute. Holden hugged me, and I broke down against his shoulder, sobbing. Not just for Harrison, for Harper, for the little girl. I sobbed for myself. For the naive woman I had been who had believed in a fairy tale. For the suffocating pressure of appearances. For my own body, which had become just another battlefield in this dirty war. "I'm sorry, Eliza," Holden murmured, stroking my hair. "I'm so sorry. You shouldn't have had to hear that. She is a horrible woman." "She's right," I said between sobs, pulling away slightly. "About the family, about Dad. Dad will be on your side," Holden exclaimed, grabbing me by the shoulders. "Do you think he'd rather see his daughter trapped in a sham marriage with a scumbag who's cheated on her for years just to look good for some wine distributors and Mrs. Perfect over there? For God's sake, Eliza, you're his daughter. He loves you." Just then, my phone rang. It was my mother. She must have spoken to Holden. I answered, putting it on speaker. My mother Martha's voice came through full of anguish. "Eliza, honey, are you okay?" Holden told me. "My God, I can't believe it. That shameless bastard and his mother. That harpy. She wants to buy you with a baby? Do they have no souls?" My mother's unconditional support, her rage on my behalf, was a balm. I cried again, but this time out of relief. "Mom, I don't know what to do," I confessed. "The first thing is to get out of that apartment," she said, with the practical firmness she always possessed. "Don't stay there with his ghosts. Come home to Washington, or go stay with Holden, but get out of there." "She's right, Eliza," Holden nodded. "Come stay with me and Jessica. The kids miss you. It'll be good for you. And your father," my mother continued with a hint of worry, "wants to speak with you." He called his father. Caldwell Sr. They yelled at each other a bit, I'm afraid. "Your father is very upset, but he supports you, honey. Never doubt that. He says you should do whatever your heart tells you and he will handle the rest." My father, Arthur Bennett. A man of few words and strong convictions. Knowing he was there, furious for me, willing to face down even the powerful Caldwells, gave me a new strength. "Thanks, Mom," I said, wiping my tears. "Tell Dad. Tell him I'll come to Walla Walla soon. But first I have to do something here." I hung up, wiped my face, and looked at Holden. "You're right. I can't stay here. But I'm not going to Washington yet, and I'm not going to your place." What? Why? Where are you going to go? Here, in the city. But I need to be alone. I need to think. And I need to find something. Find what? I took a deep breath. Margaret's attack, her mention of children, of my infertility, had stirred something. A distant memory, a piece of paper. A suspicion I had buried years ago in the bottom of a drawer because I hadn't dared to look it in the face. Proof, I said, and my voice sounded strangely serene. I need to find my own proof of everything. Holden stayed with me that night, he insisted. He slept on the living room sofa, a protective, familiar presence in the dark. The next morning, after strong coffee and silence, he left for work, but not before making me promise I'd call if I needed anything. Anything, Eliza, anytime. I nodded. I watched him leave with relief and sadness. His support was my only anchor, but it also reminded me how alone I was at the bottom of this well. As soon as he left, the cold, determined energy from the day before took hold of me again. Margaret Caldwell had tried to scare me with the future, with gossip, with my own body. But her words, instead of breaking me, had lit a fuse. If my marriage had been a farce, I needed to understand all its mechanisms. Not just Harper's story, but mine. Why I had been blind for so long. And above all, I needed proof, tangible things that confirmed I wasn't crazy, that I wasn't a hysterical wife inventing drama. Proof I could hold in my hand when, not if, but when I had to face the Caldwells again, or a lawyer, or the mirror. I started in Harrison's home office, a small room lined with oak bookshelves and an imposing desk, his sanctuary. I almost never went in there. It was his space, another unspoken boundary that now looked like a red flag. Everything was impeccable as always. Alphabetized filing cabinets, architectural digests, rolled-up blueprints. I started with the desk drawers. Invoices, receipts, firm documents, contracts, all legitimate. Boring, fitting for a successful developer. Nothing personal. Harrison was careful. Or at least he was in Chicago. I remembered what Harper had said. He needs his Chicago world. In his Chicago world, he was the respectable executive, the husband. His secrets he kept in Savannah. But there had to be something. A loose thread. A crack. I sat in his leather chair, which creaked under my weight. It smelled like him. I scanned the room, the shelves, the books, and then, on the highest shelf, almost touching the ceiling, I saw something that didn't fit. A box. Not a modern file box, but a cardboard box, like a shoebox, but larger, older, light brown, worn at the corners. It was half hidden behind a row of heavy building code volumes. My heart started beating faster. I climbed the small step stool he kept for the high books. The box was covered in a thin layer of dust. I brought it down carefully. It was light. I took it to the desk. When I opened it, the smell of old paper and cloistered memories hit my nose. There was no jewelry, no cash, no compromising photos, just papers, letters, envelopes, and in a plastic tray, my old medical file. The first thing I grabbed was an envelope. There was no return address, but the postmark was from Georgia. The handwriting was feminine, round with generous curves. It was addressed to Harrison Caldwell. Caldwell Development, Bull Street, Savannah. The date on the postmark. 7 years ago, 1 month before our wedding. My hands began to tremble. I pulled out the letter. A sheet of lined paper torn from a notebook. The blue ink a little faded. Harrison, I don't even know where to begin. Oh, yes, I do. At the beginning. At the last time I saw you here in the studio when you told me you had to go to Chicago, that it was a huge opportunity. You didn't tell me it was a woman. I found out through Lolly, who heard it from Jimmy's cousin, that you're getting married to some girl from Washington, a winery family. Her name is Eliza. Pretty name. I'm not going to be dramatic. I know what we had was never what we had for you. How could it be? For you, I was your Starland District life, the before. I knew it, but I thought when my dad passed, when you stayed by my side, I thought it meant something more. I was wrong. I'm writing to you because of the baby. Yes, Harrison. I'm pregnant. 12 weeks. The doctor gave me the results yesterday. I thought about not telling you, letting you go off to your happy wedding, your new life. But I can't. It's not fair to me or to this child. I'm not asking you to marry me, God forbid. I don't want a husband out of obligation. But you have to know. You have to decide what you're going to do. If you're going to be in her life, or if you're going to cross the Mason-Dixon and never look back. Don't call the studio. Don't say anything over the phone. If you want to talk, come here. If not, don't. But answer this letter. At least answer me, Harper. I dropped the letter on the desk. There was no air in the room. The date danced before my eyes. 1 month before our wedding. He knew. He knew everything. When he was standing before the altar, exchanging vows, he knew Harper was pregnant. When he promised me fidelity, he knew he had left a pregnant woman down south. When he said I do, he was saying no to his own child. Apure. White-hot anger invaded me. I grabbed another envelope, more recent, from about 4 years ago. Another woman's handwriting, but different. More childish, with drawings of flowers around the edges. It was from Maisie, a letter from a little girl who must have been 2 or 3 then. Colorful scribbles, and beneath them, Harper's handwriting translating, "Dear Daddy, I miss you. Mama says you work a lot in Chicago. Come soon. I love you, Maisie." And there were more. Postcards from Tybee Island. Photos. Photos of the baby girl, of the toddler learning to walk. Of the girl on her first day of school. Harrison was in some of them, smiling, holding Maisie in his arms. They were family photos, his family, and letters from Harper over the years. Not many. 1 every year or 2. Brief. Practical. They talked about money, school expenses, the child's health. Harrison, Maisie needs glasses. The optometrist costs. Harrison, the AC broke. I can't pay the repairman. Harrison, thanks for the transfer. Maisie asks when you're coming. They were the letters of a woman managing child support, not a passionate lover. But in all of them at the end, there was a small reminder. She misses you. Never I miss you. Harrison had kept all of them. Why? Out of guilt? As trophies of his double life? Or as a record, proof of his obligations? I reached the bottom of the box. And there, separated, wrapped in a silk handkerchief, was a bundle of letters tied with a ribbon. They were the oldest ones, the paper yellowing. I untied them with numb fingers. The handwriting was Harrison's, younger, less assured. Love letters addressed to Harper, dated more than 10 years ago. My Harper. The studio smells like you. Like clay and Spanish moss. Chicago is gray without you. These real estate meetings mean nothing if I can't tell you about them, baby. Last night I dreamed about the river, about you, about staying there making pottery and having a tribe of little blonde-haired kids just like you. My dad says I need to focus. That this thing down south is a whim. But you aren't a whim. You're the realest thing I have. I read fragments. Isolated pieces. Every word was a knife. They were the letters of a young man in love. Dreaming. A man I had never met. My Harrison was the mature executive, confident, a bit cynical. This Harrison, from the letters, this Harrison had belonged to Harper. Or, rather, he belonged to the past. And when that past presented him the bill in the form of a pregnancy, he had fled to Chicago. To me. I put the letters away. I couldn't read anymore. I was falling apart inside, but I had to continue. There in the plastic tray was my medical file. I pulled it out. It was from my old OB, GYN, Dr. Hayes. I opened it. Routine checkup reports, blood work, and then the thickest report. The pregnancy. Pregnancy at 21 weeks. Intrauterine fetal demise. The cold clinical phrases failed to hide the pain that still throbbed upon reading them. It was a boy. We had secretly given him a name, Harrison and I. William. We had never said it out loud. I flipped the pages. Surgery reports, post-op reports. Patient with history of second trimester loss. Factor not fully clear. Possible cervical incompetence. Recommend in-depth study in future pregnancy with preventive circlage and absolute bed rest. And then I found a page I didn't remember. A hormonal blood work report ordered months after the loss. I had requested it. Desperate for an explanation. For something to hold on to. The levels were highlighted with yellow marker by the doctor. And in the margin, her handwritten note with that illegible doctor's scrawl that I nevertheless managed to decipher because I had stared at it obsessively for weeks. Progesterone levels notably low in luteal phase, consistent with severe sustained stress. Evaluate patient's emotional context, may be a contributing factor in loss. Severe sustained stress. The phrase hit me. I remembered those months. Harrison was immersed in a massive project in Savannah. Of course, he was traveling constantly. I was alone in Chicago in this huge apartment with my progressing pregnancy, with a dull premonition that something was wrong. I would call him. Sometimes he wouldn't answer. He'd say he was in meetings on the site. I would worry. I would agonize. I cried. I was afraid. Afraid of being a mother. Afraid of that distance growing between us even before the baby was born. What if it wasn't just bad luck? What if it wasn't just my body failing? What if the severe sustained stress had a first and last name? What if the fear and loneliness I felt while he divided his time between his firm and his brewing second family contributed to losing my son? It wasn't fair. I couldn't place all the blame on him, but the connection was too painful, too clear. His double life, his lies, his absence had poisoned my pregnancy. They had created the stress that perhaps helped tear my child from me. A dry sob ripped from my throat. I pressed the folder against my chest. The love letters to Harper, the medical reports of my loss, it was all connected. His lie hadn't just destroyed my marriage, it might have destroyed my only chance to be a mother. My phone vibrated on the desk. It was Harrison. I stared at it. The name flashed on the screen. The rage I felt then had no name. It was a hurricane of pain, of betrayal, of a resentment I didn't know I could harbor. I picked up the phone not to talk, but to send a message. My fingers flew over the screen, cold and precise. Don't call. Don't come here. I found the box. The letters from Harper. The ones from before our wedding. The one from when she was pregnant. You knew. You knew everything. I also found my medical reports. The one about the stress. Now I understand everything. I don't want to see you. Not now. Maybe never. I hit send immediately. The screen showed he was typing. Incoming call. I rejected it. He called again. I rejected it again. A third attempt. I let it ring until it went to voicemail. Then a message from him. Eliza. Please. We have to talk. Those letters aren't what they seem. Let me explain. For God's sake. I replied, with a calmness that frightened me. Explain what? That you kept your pregnant mistress's letters as a souvenir? Or that my loss was the fault of the stress you created yourself? There is no explanation, only facts. Leave me alone. His response took a minute. I'm coming over now. We have to speak face to face. Panic. I couldn't see him. Not yet. Not with the rage this fresh. Not with the letters scattered across the desk, with the image of his young handwriting declaring love to another woman burning in my retinas. I ran to the front door and threw the deadbolt. Then the chain. I leaned against the wood, panting. The doorbell rang 10 minutes later. Long, insistent. "Eliza, open up, please. I know you're in there. Open the door." His voice on the other side was rough, desperate. I had never heard him like that. "Go away, Harrison," I said without raising my voice, knowing he would hear me through the door. "I'm not leaving until we talk. Please, let me in." "For what? To give me more lies? To tell me everything has an explanation?" I read the letter, Harrison. The one from 7 years ago. You knew she was pregnant when you married me. You lied to me. You lied to me every single day of these 7 years. There was a silence. Then his voice lowered, broken. Yes. Yes. I knew. And it was the biggest mistake of my life. I swear to you. But it wasn't how you think. It wasn't. It wasn't a choice. It was panic. Cowardice. I'm sorry. I'm sorrier than I can ever say. Your cowardice cost me 7 years of my life. And maybe it cost me my son, I yelled, my voice breaking on the last word. What? No. Eliza, don't say that. That's not fair. What isn't fair? I screamed, slamming my palm against the door. You talked to me about fairness? You had another family while I was here. Waiting, trusting, losing our baby. You had a healthy daughter in Savannah. Can you imagine what that feels like? Have you ever even imagined it? The silence on the other side was absolute. I could only hear his ragged breathing. No, he whispered finally. I didn't think of it like that. I never wanted to hurt you. Not you. Well, you did. And the damage is done. Now go away. I don't want to hear your voice. I don't want to see you. If you don't leave, I'm calling the police. Eliza. Go away. There was another, longer silence. Then I heard his footsteps walking away down the hall, slow, dragging. I tracked them until they faded. I slid down the door until I was sitting on the floor of the entryway. The tears didn't come anymore, just a massive emptiness, a bone-deep exhaustion. I looked toward the study, toward the open box on the desk. There lay the proof. The complete history of his betrayal. Handwritten with dates. With names. There was no more doubt. There was no more room for forgiveness, or the half measures Margaret suggested. My marriage was dead. Now I just had to bury it. And for that, I needed more than old letters. I needed a plan. I needed, for the first time in 7 years, to take control of my own life. I got up, went to the study, and with hands that no longer trembled, I carefully packed everything back into the box. The love letters, the photos of Maisie, my medical file. I closed it. It wasn't just a memory box anymore. It was my arsenal. A week after finding the box, I boarded another flight to Savannah. This time, it wasn't an impulsive trip. It was a mission. Margaret's visit, the letters, the medical reports it had all accumulated, forming a slab of rage and determination. It wasn't enough to just know. I had to act. And for that, I needed to speak to the only person who truly understood the magnitude of the lie, Harper. I didn't call her. I simply took the 9 a.m. flight out of O'Hare. I carried copies of the most revealing letters in my purse, not as a weapon, but as proof, as a common ground of betrayal. The landscape passed swiftly beneath the plane, but I wasn't looking at it. I was mentally rehearsing what I would say. I arrived in the Starland district shortly after noon. The studio was open. The same hum of the pottery wheel drifted out. This time, I didn't wait in the doorway. I pushed it open and walked in. Harper was in the same spot, shaping a large bowl. She looked up. She didn't seem surprised. She just turned off the wheel with the pedal and wiped her hands on her apron. Her expression was serene but tired. There were dark circles under her eyes. You came back, she said simply. We need to talk. I replied without preamble. For real. Without rushing. Without Maisie walking in. She studied my face. I must have looked different to her. Harder. More confident. She nodded. She's at school until 3. We have time. She stood up and went to a small mini fridge. She pulled out 2 bottles of water. Water? Thanks. I accepted. I took a sip. The studio was warm from the midday sun. Harrison came to the condo, I said bluntly, to my door. I didn't let him in. Harper nodded again, as if she knew. He called me, very worked up. Said you'd found some old things. I found a box with letters. Your letters? The first one. The one you wrote to him when you were pregnant. A month before our wedding. A flash of pain crossed her face. She lowered her gaze. Ah, that one. I had forgotten about that one. I haven't, I said, pulling the copy from my purse. I unfolded it and placed it on a table littered with pottery tools. I've read it dozens of times. You have to decide what you're going to do. If you're going to be in her life, or if you're going to cross the Mason-Dixon and never look back. He decided. Harper said quietly. He married you. And then when Maisie was born, he decided to cross the lines back and forth. Every month. Harper didn't touch the letter. She looked at it as if it were a relic from another life. Yes, that was his decision. And yours? I asked, stepping closer. Why did you accept it? Why did you let him in and out of your life for 6 years? For money. She looked up, and for the first time I saw fire in her eyes. No. Not for money. Or not just for that. At first, because he was the father of my daughter and I still believed there could be something. That maybe with time. She stopped and let out a bitter laugh. How naive. Then when I saw that no, that he always left, that his real life was up in Chicago with his elegant wife, I stayed for Maisie because she adores him. Because to her, her daddy is a hero who comes to visit. What was I supposed to tell her? That her father abandoned us for a woman with more money? I had no idea, I said. And my voice sounded rough. For 7 years, I had no idea. I thought I was happy. Or at least, not this miserable. I thought it was just work, that maybe I wasn't enough. I did have an idea, she said softly. I knew about you. Your name, where you were from, that you got married in a big fancy wedding in the cathedral. Sometimes at night when he was here, I would think about you. About what you were like. If you were happy, if you knew what a good actor he was. Her words hit me full force. The two of us, in different cities, had been living parallel lives, each trapped in our own version of Harrison's lie. His mother came to see me, I said, breaking the silence. She wanted me to forgive him, to take him back, to try to have a baby to patch up the marriage. Harper rolled her eyes. That woman is from another century. And what did you tell her? I said no. But it's not enough to say no. He's not going to give up easily. Neither is his family. To them, I am a problem to manage. And you and Maisie are a shameful secret that needs to be kept hidden. We are trapped in his game, and the only way out is to change the rules. Harper crossed her arms, leaning against the table. What do you mean? He can't have both things anymore. He can't jump from one life to another like it's nothing. He has to choose. Truly choose. And we have to force that choice. Together. She looked at me with skepticism. Together. You and me. What are you suggesting? An ultimatum? Exactly. I nodded. You and me, both of us, need to present a united front. Tell him that this situation is over, that he has to make a clear decision and live with the consequences. He will never choose, Harper said with sad certainty. Choosing means losing something. And Harrison doesn't like losing. He'll pick the option that gives him the fewest problems, which right now is probably you. Because of his family. His status. Maybe, I admitted. But if we both make it clear that that option no longer exists, that I won't take him back under any circumstances, then he loses his Chicago refuge. He'll have to face what he really wants, or at least what he is willing to take on. Harper thought about it. Her gaze drifted to the shelves full of ceramics. And if he chooses this over us, what do you win? My freedom, I answered without hesitation. The chance for a life without lies, a clean divorce, or as clean as it can be, and the certainty that I'm not leaving another woman trapped in the same cycle. If he chooses you, it will be a choice, not a hiding place, and you will be able to decide if you truly want him, knowing there is no other wife up in Chicago. And if I don't want him, even if he chooses me? She asked, looking up. Her question was sincere, not a provocation. Then you'll be free, too. You can kick him out and move on with your life without his shadow coming and going whenever it suits him. A long silence stretched between us. The sounds of the street drifted in a scooter passing, SCAD students chatting. Normal life outside. Okay, Harper said finally. Okay, how do we do it? We meet him here in Savannah. Where it all started. We tell him to come, and we drop it on him together. Together? She asked with a slight smile. That'll give him a heart attack. Maybe he deserves one, I said, unable to avoid a hint of bitterness. Just then, we heard the front door open. A sing-songy voice filled the studio. Mama! I'm home! Harper tensed. I turned around. Who must have picked her up? Seeing me, the little girl stopped dead in her tracks. Her large blue eyes, just like her mother's, locked onto me with curiosity. Hi, sweetie. Hunt chakeken. Chakent Imes. Chakent onto me. How was school? Good, Maisie said, but she didn't look away from me. She recognized my face. The older woman, plump and wearing a cardigan, looked at Harper and me with undisguised curiosity. Another one of Harrison's messes, she must have thought. Harper thanked her, and the woman left, casting one last glance over her shoulder. Maisie, honey, go upstairs for a minute. I need to talk to this lady, Harper said. But Maisie didn't move. She kept looking at me with the disarming frankness of children. You're the one who came the other day, she stated. Yes, I said, surprised by my own soft voice. I'm Eliza. I'm a friend of your mom's. Harper and I exchanged a look. Not exactly. I corrected myself. We met recently. And my dad? Maisie asked without blinking. Do you know my dad? The air thickened. Harper made a move to step in between us, but I shot her a look. It was a direct question. It deserved a direct answer, or at least as direct as one could give a 6-year-old. Yes, I said, crouching down slightly to be at her eye level. I know him. Is it true that he's very mad? Maisie asked, her little face wrinkling with concern. My mom has been sad, and last night Daddy called on the phone and they started talking and Mama yelled at him. She said she was fed up, that she couldn't take it anymore. I got scared and hid in the closet. Harper closed her eyes. A gesture of pain. I felt a pinch in my heart. Sometimes grown-ups get mad, I said, choosing my words carefully. Over important things. But it's not your fault, okay? Your dad and your mom need to talk about some things. Why are you mad at him too? Maisie insisted, with an astuteness that was almost terrifying. Yes, I admitted. I'm also mad at him. Why did he make you cry too? The simplicity of the question knocked the wind out of me. I nodded, unable to speak. Maisie nodded seriously, as if she had just confirmed a great truth of the universe. He makes my mom cry sometimes too, but not in front of me. She does it at night. I hear her. Then when he comes, he brings presents and we play. And Mom seems happy. But it's like the drawings I make and then erase. The mark is still there. Harper let out a choked sob and brought a hand to her mouth. I felt my eyes fill with tears. This little girl saw everything. She understood everything in her own way. Maisie, Honey, Harper said, recovering her voice. Go upstairs. Come on. I'll be up in a minute and we'll do homework together. Is Daddy coming soon? The girl asked, and there was a hint of hope in her voice that broke my soul. Harper looked at me. I shrugged, giving her the decision. I don't know, sweetie, Harper said with an honesty that must have cost her dearly. But whatever happens, you and I are always okay. Okay. Maisie nodded, though she didn't seem entirely convinced. She turned around and started climbing the stairs slowly. Halfway up, she stopped and turned back. Miss Eliza, she said, tell me, Maisie, if you're mad at my dad, are you his daughter too? The question, innocent and devastating, echoed in the studio like a bell. Harper held her breath. I leaned against the table so I wouldn't fall over. How do you answer that? How do you explain to a child what a mistress is? What a wife is? What a man who divides his life is? No, I managed to say, my throat tight. I'm not his daughter. I was his friend from a long time ago, and now we are mad at each other. Maisie seemed to process this. Then she nodded as if that explanation, though vague, was sufficient for her. Well, when you stop being mad, you could come play. I have a new horse puzzle. My dad doesn't like puzzles. He says they're boring. And then she continued up the stairs and disappeared. The silence she left behind was different. The air had cleared of adult tension, but it had filled with the raw, unfiltered truth of a child. Harper wiped away a furtive tear. My God, she murmured. She hears everything. She notices everything. He has both of us, I said. And it was the most logical, saddest conclusion. Both of us crying over the same man. It's too heavy a burden for shoulders that small. Harper nodded, her eyes shining. You're right. This can't continue. For her, it has to end. She took a deep breath. Okay. You call him or I'll call him. Tell him to come down here and we'll tell him together. Are you sure? I asked, even though it was what I had come looking for. I've never been surer of anything. After hearing her, yes. He has to choose. Or leave. But this comedy is over. We pulled out our phones, but it was Harper who dialed. She put it on speaker. It rang twice before he answered. Harper? His voice on the other line sounded tired, tense. Is everything okay? Is something wrong with Maisie? Maisie is fine, but we need you to come to Savannah. Now. Now is impossible. I have Harrison, I interrupted, speaking clearly into the phone. It's Eliza. I am here in the studio with Harper, and we need to see you. There was a silence so profound on the other end that I thought the call had dropped. Eliza. What? What are you doing there? What is going on? What is going on is that the two of us have talked, I said, keeping my voice firm. And we have reached an agreement. You need to come hear it in person. What kind of agreement? His voice was a thread full of panic. The agreement that is going to end this farce once and for all. Harper took over. You catch the next flight or you drive, but you are here tonight, or I'll start making my own decisions regarding Maisie, and you aren't going to like them. It was a bluff, but it worked. We could hear his agitated breathing. Okay, I'll go. I'm leaving for O'Hare now. I'll be there around 8. We'll be waiting, Harper said, and hung up. She placed the phone on the table. We looked at each other. We weren't friends. Perhaps we never would be. But in that moment, we were allies. Two generals preparing for the final battle against a common enemy. We have a little over 5 hours, I said. Yes, Harper nodded, looking toward the stairs, toward where her daughter was. Just enough time to make her dinner, put her to bed, and prepare to destroy his world. The night of the confrontation with Harrison was a hurricane of voices, accusations, and tears. He arrived at the studio on Thomas Square shortly after 8. Pale, his tie undone. Seeing Harper and me together, sitting next to each other on the low stools in the studio, was a blow from which he did not recover. The conversation was brutal. We laid out chronologically, with the coldness of two prosecutors, the architecture of his lie, the letters, the dates, the trips, the pain Maisie intuited. My miscarriage, the farce of our marriage. Harrison crumbled, not with rage, but with a profound exhaustion, as if the weight of carrying two lives for years had finally broken his back. He yelled. He defended himself. He cried. But faced with the unexpected alliance of the two women he had lied to, his arguments dissolved like sugar in water. There was no decision that night, only an ultimatum. He had 1 week, 7 days to choose which life he wanted, knowing the other door would close forever, and that whatever he chose, nothing would ever be the same. When I left the studio, the Savannah night was warm and sweet. Harper stayed inside with Harrison, who was still sitting on the floor, his head in his hands. I didn't pity him. I just felt a massive emptiness. I went up to my hotel room near the historic district and collapsed on the bed, exhausted. I had won a battle, but the war wasn't over yet. The next morning, the sun poured through the window. My phone was silent. No message from Harrison, none from Harper. The silence was strange, oppressive. I couldn't stay in the room. I needed to move, to think, and without really knowing why, my feet led me back toward the Starland district. Not to the studio, but toward Forsyth Park. I stood by the large fountain, leaning on the stone rim, watching the water cascade. The Spanish moss swayed lazily in the breeze. "Miss Eliza!" A little voice startled me. I turned around. Standing next to me, holding the hand of the older woman I recognized as the neighbor, was Maisie. She wore a yellow dress and her unicorn backpack. Her large eyes looked at me with curiosity. "Hi, Maisie," I said, surprised. I smiled at the neighbor, who watched me with suspicion. "Good morning," the woman said. "The girls saw you and wanted to say hi. We're on our way to the playground. Can I walk with Miss Eliza?" Maisie asked, letting go of the neighbor's hand and taking mine with a naturalness that left me breathless. "Oh, Maisie, I don't know." I started, looking at the neighbor, who shrugged. "I don't mind if the lady doesn't mind. But your mother told me to take you to the park and back home. I'll take her," I said almost without thinking. The idea of spending time with this little girl, who was simultaneously the symbol of my pain and an innocent creature, suddenly felt necessary. "I'll walk her home afterward, I promise." The neighbor hesitated, but finally nodded. "She lives at 412 Thomas Square. You know it." She left, casting one last warning look. I was left alone with Maisie, whose warm, small hand was still in mine. She looked at me seriously. "Are we going to the swings?" she asked. "If you want," I replied. We walked through the park. We walked in silence for a while. She skipped over the sidewalk cracks, avoiding the lines. "My dad came last night," she said suddenly, without looking at me. "I know," I said carefully. "He was talking to my mom. I heard voices, but they weren't fighting voices. They were sad voices. Sad was the exact word. There had been no yelling in the end, only an exhaustion full of pain. Sometimes grown-ups talk about sad things," I said, feeling clumsy. "Is that why my mom was crying this morning?" she asked. And this time she lifted her huge eyes to me. There was genuine worry in them, and something else a need to understand. I stopped. We had reached the play area. The oak trees provided shade, and some children were running around the swings. "Maisie, your mom loves you very much. And sometimes when we're sad, we cry. But it's not your fault. It's never your fault." "I know," she said, with a maturity that didn't suit her. "It's because of Dad. It's always because of Dad. When he comes, Mom is happy for a few days, and then she gets nervous. And when he leaves, she gets sad. It's like a roller coaster, but without the fun part." Her analogy was so precise it hurt. She sat on a bench, and I sat next to her. She dropped her backpack at her feet. "Are you on the roller coaster too?" she asked. I looked at her. Her blue eyes, so alive, so full of intelligence, awaited a true answer. I couldn't lie to her, not like the adults around her had done for years. "Yes," I admitted. "I was on that roller coaster too, but I've decided to get off." She frowned, thinking, "And can my mom get off too?" "That's what she has to decide." Maisie nodded as if my answer made sense. She pulled a water bottle from her backpack and took a sip. "I like it when my dad comes. He plays with me. He makes me laugh. But he always leaves. And my mom doesn't like it when I get my hopes up. She says you shouldn't expect anything. That way you don't get disappointed." She paused. "But it's hard not to expect anything, because he's my dad." Every word from this child was a dart. She spoke of absence, of disappointment, of conditional love with the devastating simplicity of someone who knows nothing else. "Your dad loves you, Maisie," I said. And it was true. In the photos, in his voice when he spoke of her, you could tell. But sometimes adults are complicated, and we cause pain without wanting to. She gave me a look so perceptive it made me shiver. Then her expression changed. She lit up with an idea. "Do you want to see where I like to hide?" "Sure." She led me down a narrow path between some bushes to a small, hidden clearing behind a large hedge. There on the ground was a fort made of branches and stones. It was her hiding place. "I come here when my parents talk with those voices," she said, sitting on the dirt inside her fort. "You can't hear anything here, just the birds." I sat down next to her on the ground. The place was quiet, isolated. A refuge. "It's a good hiding place," I said. "Yeah. I draw here." She pulled a notebook and a box of worn-colored pencils from her backpack. She opened it. On the pages, there were drawings. Many drawings. Most of them showed 3 figures. A tall one, Harrison, a medium one, Harper, and a small one, her. But in some, there were only 2 figures, her mother and her. In others, her father and her. And in a recent one, there were 3 figures again, but the middle one was different, thinner, with darker hair. It was me. I recognized my outfit, the one I wore to the studio the first time. The 3 of us were holding hands, and a sun smiled in the corner. I pointed to the drawing. "Is that me?" She nodded, a little embarrassed. "I put you in because now you're in my dad's stuff too, and my mom doesn't cry alone anymore. She talks to you. That's good, right?" The knot in my throat was so large I couldn't speak. I nodded. "Yes, Maisie. It's good. Plus," she continued, turning the pages, in the drawings, "I can make us all be together. In real life, it almost never happens. Only in old photos when I was a baby." She found an older drawing, the paper folded and stained. It was a house with 3 windows. In each window, a face. Her father, her mother, her, and underneath in shaky toddler letters it said, "My house. My house. My house." But without the E, on the first 2, as if the house, the concept itself, was incomplete, broken. "Maisie," I said, my voice hoarse. "Do you know who I am, really?" She set the notebook aside. She looked at me, and her expression became very serious, very adult. "You're the lady from Chicago, my dad's wife." The blow was dry, clean. There was no drama in her voice, just a fact she knew. She had put the pieces together. "How do you know?" I asked breathlessly, because sometimes my mom talks on the phone with her friend Lolly, and I hear them. They say his wife in Chicago, the wine girl from Washington. And because once, a long time ago, I saw a photo on my dad's phone. He was with a pretty dark-haired lady in a really nice place with flowers. It was you. And he was smiling, but not like how he smiles with me. He smiled differently. And then when you came to the studio, I remembered, and my mom acted really weird afterward. And last night, when the three of you were together, I knew for sure. Her childlike logic was impeccable. She had known everything, or almost everything, for a long time, and she had kept it to herself in her fort of branches, in her drawings. And you aren't mad at me? I asked, not knowing why her answer was so important. Maisie shrugged. No, you didn't do anything. My dad did. He's the one who has 2 houses, 2 families. That isn't right. In school, the teacher says you should have 1 family and love them a lot. My dad doesn't do that. He has 2 and he loves them a little. Or he loves them badly. He loves them a little, or he loves them badly. The rawness of her judgment was absolute and just. It's complicated, Maisie. Yeah, I know. That's why I'd rather draw it. That way it comes out how I like it. She closed the notebook. Do you have kids? The question again, straight to the heart. No. I had a baby, but he went to heaven before he was born. She looked at me, and her eyes filled with an immediate understanding, with that instant, pure sorrow that only children possess. I'm sorry. That must hurt a lot. Yes, it hurts. And that's why you're so sad sometimes, even if you don't cry. You can tell in your eyes. No one in my entire adult life had looked at me with such clarity. Not Harrison, not my parents, not my friends. This 6-year-old girl in her fort of branches saw me truly. Yes, I whispered. That's why, too. She nodded thoughtfully. Then she grabbed a red pencil and scribbled something on the last page of her notebook. She tore it out and handed it to me. It was a heart, a big red heart, and inside 3 letters. DBS. What is it? I asked. Don't be sad. The letters in the heart are to make the pain go away. It works for me when something hurts. I took the paper. The heart was imperfect, crooked. It was the most beautiful thing anyone had given me in years. Thank you, Maisie. You're welcome. She stood up and brushed the dirt off her dress. Can you take me home now? My mom will get worried. We walked back to Thomas Square in silence, but it was no longer an uncomfortable silence. She took my hand again. When we reached the door to the studio, Harper was in the entryway talking to the neighbor. Seeing us, her worry-lined face softened. Mama? Maisie said, letting go of my hand and running toward her. I went to the park with Miss Eliza and we talked. Harper looked at me over her daughter's head. Her eyes asked me 1,000 questions. Yes. And what did you talk about? About roller coasters and drawings, and that Miss Eliza also had a baby who went to heaven. Maisie said it with such naturalness that tears sprang to Harper's eyes. The girl looked at her. Don't cry, Mom. I gave her a heart for the pain. Harper knelt down and hugged her daughter tightly. Thank you, sweetie. You're the best. Now go upstairs. I'm going to talk to Eliza for a minute. Maisie obeyed. At the door, she turned and gave me a little wave before disappearing up the stairs. Harper wiped her eyes and stepped closer. Thank you for walking her back. The neighbor called me, panicked. But I'm glad you two talked. She knows, Harper, I said without preambles. She knows who you are. She has known or intuited it for a long time. Harper closed her eyes and nodded with a gesture of resignation. Yes, I suspected. She's very smart, and she hears everything. And what did she tell you? That her father loves us a little or badly, that in her drawings she fixes things, and that life is a roller coaster without the fun part. A sad smile formed on Harper's lips. That's my Maisie. She has a clarity that hurts. She paused. Harrison called an hour ago. He's in Chicago. He says he needs the whole week to think, that he can't. He can't breathe. I agreed. 1 more week. Nothing will change. No, I said. Nothing will change for him. But we have changed. And she, I pointed upstairs, isn't a baby anymore. She deserves the truth and a stable life. Harper nodded. Yes, you're right. And after today, after seeing her with you, I know what I have to do. What we must do. Whatever he chooses, we have to protect her and protect ourselves. Together, if necessary. We weren't friends. But in that moment, standing outside the doorway in Savannah, we were something more solid than allies. We were two women who, through the pain caused by the same man, had found a common ground. The desire to protect a child and to salvage the pieces of our own lives. Together, I confirmed. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Harrison. Short. Eliza, I'm back in the city. I need to see you. Just to talk. Please. I showed it to Harper. She read it and rolled her eyes. Same old song. Let's talk. Let me explain. He needs to buy time so he doesn't have to choose. Yes, I said. And then I made a decision. I didn't reply to the message. Instead, I wrote a new one, addressed to both of them, to Harrison and copied to Harper. Harrison, there is nothing more to talk about. Your week started yesterday. Use the time to decide, not to try to convince us. Harper and I are no longer listening, only acting. From now on, any communication will be through my lawyer, Evelyn Pierce, or Harper's. Choose wisely. I hit send. The sound of the message going out was like the strike of a final gavel. Harper received the copy on her phone. She looked at it and then looked at me. A real smile, albeit a tired one, appeared on her lips. Well done. I said goodbye to her and started walking. As I turned the corner, I stopped. I pulled the folded piece of paper Maisie had given me out of my purse. The crooked red heart. DBS. Don't be sad. And for the first time in many weeks, I felt that perhaps, just perhaps, all was not lost. I had broken the silence. I had found an unexpected ally. And I had met a little girl whose innocent wisdom had given me more clarity than 7 years of therapy. The road ahead would be hard. There would be lawyers, a divorce, a scandal, pain. But I was no longer alone. And I was no longer afraid. I put the heart back in my purse, keeping it close, and kept walking under the Savannah sun. There was a little girl in a Starland District studio who believed a drawing could fix things. And maybe, in a way, she was right. Because sometimes, to fix something, you first have to draw the new outlines, erase the old ones, and start fresh with a new pencil on a blank page. The week passed with the slowness of a glacier. Chicago, beneath a leaden late winter sky, became the stage for my silence. I kept my word. I didn't answer Harrison. His messages, increasingly scarce and desperate, were deleted unread. His calls rejected. My lawyer, a dry, efficient woman named Evelyn Pierce, handled everything. Leave it in my hands, Mrs. Caldwell. That's what you pay me for. And I did. Meanwhile, I moved out. I couldn't stay in the Gold Coast apartment, saturated with memories and the ghost of a life that was never real. I found a small, bright apartment in Lincoln Park, renting it out. Minimal furniture, white, new. Nothing that reminded me of the past. My father from Washington had sent me a generous check. To start over, sweetheart, without depending on anyone. At first, out of pride, I wanted to refuse it. Then I understood it wasn't charity. It was love. And I accepted it. Harper and I maintained sporadic contact. Cold at first, then more practical. Brief texts. She informed me that Harrison had gone to Savannah for a day, had spoken to her, and had left without deciding anything. Still the same. Lost. I informed her that the divorce papers were in motion. We weren't confidant, but we were accomplices in the execution of a sentence. On the morning of the 8th day, the morning the ultimatum expired, I woke up before dawn, not out of anxiety, but with a strange, expectant calm. I made coffee and sat by the large window of my new living room, watching the city turn gray and orange over the skyline. I knew that today something would end, and something, perhaps, would begin. At 10 o'clock, the doorbell rang. It wasn't unexpected. I had felt it coming. I opened it. Harrison was in the hallway. He seemed to have aged 10 years in a week. Sunken eyes, unshaven, wearing the same wrinkled jacket from the day I threw him out. But there was no rage in him anymore, nor desperation. Only an infinite fatigue, and something resembling resignation. "Hi, Eliza," he said in a rough voice. "Harrison, you can come in. Just for a minute." I gestured for him to enter. He did, closing the door behind him. His gaze swept the new minimalist apartment, devoid of his presence. A muscle in his jaw twitched. "You moved." "Yes." "It's nice. Different." "Yes." He stood awkwardly, not knowing what to do with his hands. Finally, he sighed. "I spoke to Harper yesterday." "I know," she told me. He nodded as if he expected that. "I've made a decision. Or rather, I've understood that the decision was already made for me by you two. By me years ago, when I married you while lying." His words fell into the silence of the room, flat, without dramatics. "Tell me," I requested. Even though I already knew. "I can't come back here," he said, looking me directly in the eyes for the first time. I saw no lie or calculation, only the naked, painful truth. "You don't love me, and rightly so. I destroyed your trust, your life, everything. And even if you wanted to forgive me, which you don't, I couldn't look you in the face every morning, remembering what I did to you, what I did to Harper, to my daughter. My daughter." He said it with a new ownership, without hesitation. "And with Harper?" I asked. A grimace of pain crossed his face. "Harper doesn't love me, or she doesn't love me as a man to share a life with. She told me very clearly that what we had ended years ago, that now, after all this, not even that she only wants me to do right by Maisie, to be a real father, present, or at least constant. But that her house, her bed, her life are no longer my place." I knew every word was true. Harper had hinted at it in a message. I told him there's no going back here. The girl is the only thing that matters now. So I have no place anywhere, Harrison concluded, his voice cracking slightly. "I deserve it. I know." "And what are you going to do?" I asked without an ounce of pity, but without resentment either. Resentment is also a bond, and I wanted to cut them all. "I'm moving to Savannah, but not with them. I'll rent a small apartment. I'll find work down there or I'll run the firm, but shift my base. I want to be close to Maisie for whatever she needs, to take her to school, for the weekends, to be her father, not a visitor. It's the only thing I have left, and it's the only thing I should do." It was perhaps the first adult responsible decision he had made in his life, not driven by desire nor by cowardice, nor by family pressure, but by duty. A duty toward the innocent creature he had brought into the world. "Your mother won't be happy," I said, almost as a side comment. A bitter smile formed on his lips. "My mother no longer has a vote in my life. We had a conversation. I told her that her world of appearances is over for me, that I'm going to do what I must, even if it means a scandal, that if she wants to see her granddaughter, she's going to have to swallow her pride and treat Harper with the respect she deserves. I don't know if she will, but I will." I was surprised. It was a new Harrison, or perhaps the man he always could have been if he hadn't been drowning in the Caldwell's expectations. "And us?" I asked, referring to the practicalities, the paperwork. "I'll sign whatever it is," he said immediately. "The divorce papers, the settlement. I'm not going to fight you." The apartment on the Gold Coast is yours. Or we sell it and you take half, whatever you want. I don't want anything. Just that someday, maybe a long time from now, you can stop hating me. I don't hate you, Harrison, I said. And as I said it out loud, I knew it was true. I despised him. I hated him for days. But now I just felt pity and a great exhaustion. I want you to sign the papers, move to Savannah, be a good father to Maisie, and leave me in peace forever. He nodded, swallowing hard. There were tears in his eyes, but he didn't let them fall. I will. I promise you. He paused. Can I ask you one thing? The last thing. You and Harper. Are you? The question surprised me. I thought for a moment. No, we aren't friends, but we have an understanding. A respect for what we've been through. And for Maisie. She is the tie. A tie that doesn't bind us to each other, but forces us to behave well with one another. For her, Harrison nodded, understanding. She's an incredible kid. The only good thing I've ever done. Yes, I said. And for the first time, I felt a hint of emotion unrelated to my own pain. She is. Take care of her. I will. He walked to the door. He stopped with his hand on the knob. Goodbye, Eliza. Goodbye, Harrison. He walked out. The door closed with a soft click. This time there was no drama, no screaming, just the definitive sound of a chapter closing. I stood in the middle of the empty living room. I didn't cry. I took a deep breath. The air of the new apartment, devoid of history, filled my lungs. It was clean air. A month later, the divorce papers were processing, but the agreement was complete. Harrison had signed without a word. We sold the Gold Coast apartment. I kept my share and my new place in Lincoln Park. He moved to Savannah just as he said. According to Harper, he had rented a small apartment in the Starland district, 2 blocks from the studio. He picked Maisie up from school 3 days a week. He was still clumsy, insecure, but he showed up. Maisie, according to her mother, was calmer. She knows he's coming and he comes. That's enough for her right now. One spring afternoon, my phone vibrated with a video call. It was Harper. I accepted it, surprised. Her face appeared on the screen, illuminated by the light of the studio. Hi, am I bothering you? Nothing bad happened. No, you're fine. There's someone here who wants to say hi. She moved the camera away. Maisie appeared with her missing front teeth smile. Hi, Miss Eliza. Hi, gorgeous. How are you? Really good. Today I made a really pretty drawing at school and my dad came to pick me up, and tomorrow we're going to Tybee Island to see the lighthouse. She spoke a mile a minute. Hey, do you live in Chicago? Yes, I do. Well, my mom says that maybe this summer, if we want, we can go to Chicago for a day to see the Bean. The Bean and ride the boats on the river, Harper's voice said in the background. Yeah, to see the Bean and ride the boats. Would you come? I looked through the screen. I saw Maisie hopeful, and Harper in the background nodding with a slight smile. It wasn't an invitation to friendship. It was an invitation to build something new, something different around that little girl, a bond that had no name but existed. Of course I would go, I said, and I smiled for real. I would love to. Awesome, Maisie yelled. I'll make you another drawing. Bye-bye. Harper reappeared on the screen. Thank you. She's fond of you, and I'm okay with that. If it doesn't bother you, it doesn't bother me. It's good. Good. We'll talk later then. Take care, Eliza. Take care, Harper. I hung up. I stared at the phone. Then I got up and went to the window. Spring in Chicago was beginning to tinge the trees on the street with green. The air was crisp, full of promises. I didn't know what the future held for me, if I would find love again, if I would have children, if my life would always be this quiet and alone in my Lincoln Park apartment. But for the first time in a very, very long time, That uncertainty didn't scare me. It made me curious. I had chosen this solitude. I had carved it out with blows of truth and pain, and now it was mine. Only mine. The winter had passed. The storm had passed. And I, Eliza Bennett, former Mrs. Caldwell, was still standing. I had lost a husband, an illusion, a son, but I had found myself. And in the process, I had gained the respect of a strong woman in Savannah and the spontaneous affection of a 6-year-old girl who believed that drawings could fix things. Maybe she was right. Maybe life was nothing more than a giant drawing. And I finally held the pencil in my hand with a blank page before me. I smiled, breathed in the spring air, and went into the kitchen. I was hungry. I was going to cook something for myself, just for me.